It's that time. Your fix is here. College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
Happy, joy, another installment of JC and Morgan. Hope you are doing well out there in, used to say Radio Land. Now it's everything land. It's streaming land. It's audio land. It's video land. It's Spotify land. It's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Google Play land. It's jcandmorgan.com land. You get it. We're all over the place, and you folks have found us, and we're grateful for that. We're grateful for the parade of great guests here that we've had recently, and one of them, one of our favorites, friend of the family, if you will, Tom Luginbill of ESPN, also of the XFL lately. We'll get some of his thoughts on that. Will join us. This follows Tim Brando, Andy Staples, Ross Dellinger, Dan Wetzel, Barrett Sallee, just in the last few weeks alone. The guest parade has been on fire here. Our producer is Mad Dog Phil Mullinax. You don't see him, but trust me, he's a very handsome man and does a great job behind the controls of this. Speaking of handsome, that's JC Shurburtt. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, he is in the left box. Circle gets the square. JC Shurburtt, the purveyor of thebigspur.com and icon of 24/7 sports, among many other attributes. Joining us from frigid Chicago, I am Mike Morgan of ESPN on the SEC Network, and joining you from Studio South, or as I like to call it, Studio Paradise, here in South Florida. You can't see that because I've got North Dallas 40 in my backdrop, but trust me, I'm here. And trust me, it's nice and warm and coastal and beautiful, and enjoying every minute of it. Speaking of enjoying, JC, do you remember for years, especially like, I don't know, when did I stop doing this? Maybe 2-3 years ago. I would introduce the show, and one of the things I would say, and I meant this from the bottom of my heart, we are nothing if we're not sincere on this show with our takes, opinions, views on life. Two loves in life that I would start every show with: college football, which we talk incessantly about on this show, and we'll get into some college hoops, don't you worry. And what? Pepper-crusted bacon. Why did I stop saying that, you ask? Because the supermarkets that I frequent, and most of the people in the South probably frequent, Publix and Kroger, right? I'm a Publix Kroger guy. Take your pick on what day of the week. I realize, and I've lived up north before, I'm familiar with Safeway. I'm familiar with Food Lion, some of the other supermarkets out there. But all of a sudden, it was no longer on the shelves of either Publix or Kroger. No answers. Now, look, in the last few years, I've learned things about that I never knew. Like, I didn't know there was a supply chain issue until the last few years. You know, I didn't know there would be a shortage of like baby food until the last few years. These are things we never thought that as Americans we'd have to worry about, but all of a sudden things changed drastically, and they were concerns. Well, I just assumed that a popular item like black pepper bacon, or even maple black pepper crusted bacon, that would be in abundant supply. So I wind up the other day, I go to a Walmart to go shopping because I'm a man of the people, JC. I'm not just living in a Publix world. I'll shop anywhere for good groceries and good deals. And look what I found for those of you watching on YouTube. Can we get that? Can we? Camera 2. Are you seeing this? Or is my backdrop interrupting it?
No.
That is Hormel, established in 1891. Black label, maple black pepper, thick cut bacon. It was in Walmart. So what did I do? I bought 3 friggin' packs of it. I loaded up like a bear getting ready to hibernate for the winter. And needless to say, I'm very happy. I had some of that this morning and will continue to eat it until it runs out of supply. And I just hope the other grocery chains that may be listening for some ideas to keep your customers happy always have a healthy stock of pepper-crusted bacon on the ready. So I'm in a good mood right off the bat with that, JC. How are you, sir?
It's outstanding. Yeah, the wife is actually, what is it? There's some kind of like kielbasa we like that's spicy, and she can only find it at Walmart. So maybe Walmart's a little bit ahead of the chain, so to speak. Ha ha ha. With some of the
supply
stuff.
chain, I got you.
Yeah, it's I'm not a. I would be lying if I said Walmart's my favorite place to go shop. But you can order a delivery. You can get your groceries delivered from them, and it's on time. I mean, they don't jack up the price on you or anything like that. And so we do that from time to time. But yeah,
okay.
I'm very happy for you finding that pepper crusted bacon, Mike.
This makes me very happy.
The morale, full of joy.
Yes, the morale of JC and Morgan up considerably after that. It'll be up considerably after the JC 5. After our first time out. Before we get into a number of things in the college football world, be remiss if we didn't talk a little college basketball. The season has come and gone. We talked more women's hoops last week in one segment than we did in like 7 years of the show because I thought it was justifiable. we don't have an agenda here on the show. We try to give you what you want. And we're not going to, we don't have a quota list of like, okay, you got to run this topic 10% of the time. You got to run. We kind of run our own stuff, if you will. But I thought it was the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, the Final Four, the record numbers, the South Carolina phenomenon with Dawn Staley, which is the closest thing to a dynasty we've seen since Gino. All these things added up to a terrific situation involving the popularity of the sport. And I hope it continues. I don't know if it will, because I think Caitlin Clark, you got to remember, Caitlin Clark, because of the Big Ten's contract with Fox, they weren't running those games on like FS1. They were running them on Fox, the actual main network, just like the national title game was on ABC, the main network. That helps. Believe it or not, there are a lot of people that still don't have cable, or they don't know, they don't go up and down the dial and search for TBS and TNT and ESPN2 and all these other things. So they were getting incredible exposure. Iowa was right off the bat all year long. And then you add the job that ESPN does, and because remember, they don't have the men's tournament. So they're putting all their eggs into that. I mean, they are all in. They just signed the new contract to carry the sports that are not football and men's basketball. They have that extended. So this is like one of their Super Bowls. They put all their resources into it, and it drew another ridiculously high number, right? 18.7. Is that I'm going off the top of my head. 18.7 million, or is it right around there?
Peaked at 24.
Yeah, they were hoping to score a 20, but and either way, it's one of the highest rated college basketball games in the last 5 years, men's or women's. So kudos to the sport. I'm going to talk a little bit about the men's side because we didn't talk about this last week. Congratulations to UConn. Congratulations to Dan Hurley. These are the back-to-back winners, by the way. We all know the last one was Billy Donovan. 17 years ago. Billy Donovan back in the news. More on that in a moment. Coach K, 91-92. Grant Hill, Leitner, Hurley. You know the rest of the story. Then you got to go back to before we were born, JC. John Wooden, 67-73 and 64-65. Ed Jucker, I must admit I was not familiar with Ed Jucker's work, but I do remember the Cincinnati team 61-62 just as a historian, how good they were. Phil Wolpert, again, I couldn't spot Phil Wolpert if he came and dumped a bowl of soup over my head. If he did that, first off, he'd have to come from the grave. But secondly, I wouldn't be a big fan of Mr. Wolpert. I'd say, sir, why did you just pour that bowl of soup over my head? Kindly clean it up. That's kind of would be my reaction. You know, I'm a very calm, even-tempered individual.
Depends on what kind of soup, really.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, if I'm sick and it's chicken noodle, hey, I'm all in. But he coached San Francisco 55-56. I'm assuming without even looking up, I'm almost positive that's Bill Russell. Adolph Rupp, Kentucky, 48-49. And Henry Iba, who Bobby Knight considered kind of his mentor, his idol, 45-46. Those are the back-to-back title winners. The Big East, I always make a point of saying the Power 6 when I talk about college basketball, not the Power 5. Well, now it might be the Power 5 because we don't have a Pac-10 anymore. But the Big East is very legit. They have won 4 out of the last 8 national titles. Now, it's been 2 schools, Villanova and UConn, but it's 4 out of the last 8 for the Big East. The Big East is very, very legit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you also have schools like Marquette, programs like Marquette, Creighton, has been really good. Providence has been good. Seton Hall's good. I mean, they're all good.
Yeah.
I mean, when Georgetown is at the bottom with DePaul, and those are 2 teams from the 80s that were pretty good back then, your conference is solid. I mean, Xavier and the great Sean Miller went 9-11 in the league this year. I mean, it is a hell of a basketball conference.
Very good.
No question.
No question about it. So that's I don't know what the number's going to be. Honestly, I mean, UConn beat the opponents by an average of 23 points. They were just better. I picked them to win it, and I felt guilty about it because I knew it was so chalkish. But I couldn't find anybody that was on their level this year. And they are a classic case of it's not just about who's got the most first-round draft picks. Again, if it were, John Calipari would be sitting on 8-9 national titles. Speaking of which, a bombshell dropped Saturday night of the Final Four. Now, I could have scooped everybody on this one because my man Joe Klein, who I do some TV with on the SEC Network, proud Arkansas alum, an All-American, an Olympian, NBA title with the Bulls, played with Kobe, played with Bird, played with Jordan, just an unbelievable career. And a better human being you will not find than Joe Klein. And Joe text messaged me out of the blue. And I don't get a lot of text messages from Joe unless we're working together. And he says, Mike, I'm hearing Cal to Arkansas, close to a done deal. And I said, Joe, when did you start day drinking? What are you talking about? I mean, what, are you on your second 6-pack? What's going on? He said, I'm just telling you. I said, how are they going to pull that off, financially? And he said one word, Tyson. Now, Walmart, speaking of Walmart, people think that Walmart is this open ATM for Arkansas athletics. They are not. But Mr. Tyson, the chicken tycoon billionaire, if chances are if you've had chicken wings or buffalo tenders or anything in the last few weeks, Tyson can be traced to the origin of that chicken. They are in Arkansas, and I've been to Fayetteville 100 times, literally. And I can tell you, Walmart, yes, Walmart's big. They give money to a lot of schools, not just Arkansas, and they're not an open ATM. But J.B. Hunt and Tyson's Chicken, a lot of money. Big Arkansas backers. Tyson. And when you find out Mr. Tyson is golfing partners with Calipari, it's all starting to make sense. JC, I was thinking about this to come up with a football analogy. If Nick Saban, let's say 5 years ago, if Nick Saban all of a sudden, now let's say he went through a little stretch where he hadn't won a national title, but they were still winning a bunch of games every year. He was still getting top recruiting classes every year. But the fan base was getting impatient with Nick, and Nick was getting a little impatient with the lofty expectations. And he said, you know what? The hell with all of you. I'm going to Ole Miss because Lane Kiffin, let's just say Lane retired. He went on and he bought an island in the Caribbean and decided I'm just going to chill and drink pina coladas and golf all day, which is probably not that far of a stretch. But let's just say that happened. And Nick told the world, I'm leaving Alabama. The hell with y'all. I'm taking the Ole Miss job because the big booster at Ole Miss, whoever, some author or former Miss America, decided to pony up a bunch of millions of dollars. I mean, that would take the earth off its axis. That's the equivalent of what just happened. Calipari leaving Kentucky. And this is no disrespect to Arkansas. Arkansas does have a national title, one. And Musselman recently took them to 2 Elite Eights and a Sweet 16. But that kind of move in a major sport to leave a blue blood for kind of the next tier, if you will, that is, I don't want to say it's unprecedented, but man, oh man, you don't see that very often. SEC on SEC. I don't want to call it a poaching because it was clear Kentucky was ready to move on. They just didn't want to pay $33 million. So you can't say it's a poach as much as it is like, okay, we're all in a happier place now. That's just crazy.
It is. It's sort of similar. I mean, Arkansas's in football, they've tried to do this a couple of times. They went down the road with coaches that were in similar situations, good coaches, not getting fired, but nobody to be sad if they left. Les Miles at LSU, Jeff Long, who is friends with, who eventually hired Les at Kansas, who, by the way, that's everybody that wants to credit and blame athletic directors for everything. Watch how Jeff Long's career went.
Yeah.
But Les was down the road with them pretty good. I believe it was, was it when they hired Belima? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think it's when they hired Petrino. It was when they hired Belima. And then Gus Malzahn in 2017 was as good as out the door. I mean, and then Auburn all of a sudden was the best team in college football for a month. They beat Alabama. They beat Georgia by 23. They beat Bama by 2 touchdowns. Both games were on the Plains. It was that Jarrett Stidham team. And then all of a sudden, both running backs get hurt. They go to the SEC title game at Mercedes-Benz, and Georgia waxes them. And that's the year Georgia made its way back to the title, and Auburn had to go back to Atlanta and play national champion UCF in the Peach Bowl and lost. But during that time period before the bowl, Auburn was worried about losing Malzahn to Arkansas, and they signed him to a ludicrous contract. Remember the ludicrous contract?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, ludicrous.
With a ludicrous buyout.
Yeah, it's insane. They're going to be paying Gus Malzahn forever,
Yeah. $23 million.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And so Arkansas has been close to pulling something like this for quite some time. There's also history at Kentucky of this. Tubby Smith, everybody forgets, left and took Minnesota. And he almost left and took South Carolina.
That's right.
Shortly into his tenure. There's just a lot of pressure with this Kentucky basketball job. So I don't know. I think it's a ground shaking kind of event because Cal's been there 15 years, and you kind of just thought, well, they're going to hold serve, and he better do better next year, and all that good stuff. And there was that awkward press conference, and the interesting thing to me, Mike, is the reports have also come out that he went down the road with Ohio State pretty far. Like he was actively, and they're like, oh, we'll keep our interim guy or whatever. Ohio State probably has spent too much money on football to get Cal, in basketball or whatever. However, I do think Arkansas, if you look back, and I don't know if it was this show or ITG, we were talking about Final Fours and the SEC. Arkansas has been they're second in the league as far as Final Four appearances go, with 6 behind Kentucky. They do have a tradition from kind of way back in the day, and then Eddie Sutton was there, and Nolan Richardson, of course, had the big run. And then they had a bunch of John Felfrey was a bad coach there, a Stan Heath coach there, and failed. They kind of have just had a run of coaches that didn't really work out. Mike Anderson was okay, good, not great. And they took him from Missouri. You remember that? Mike Anderson was at Missouri, and he
was red hot. He took him to an Elite Eight, and it was like, and he's got Nolan pedigree, so it's like, okay, this can't fail, and it failed.
It failed, and then he went to St. John's and failed, and so that was weird with him.
Yeah.
And so then they land on Musselman, and Musselman was kind of one of those old NBA guys. That, he won at Nevada, whatever, and he lit him. He got him back,
Big
so
time.
This could be a next step type of deal, with I think there's still a discussion to be had as to whether or not you can win with a bunch of one and dones. But I'll tell you this, it's a lot easier when you go to a new place and decide you're going to do something a little different and adjust at a new place and set the standard at your new job than it is to go and kind of reverse course on 15 years of a plan in Lexington. So that's interesting. I'm curious to see who Kentucky hires.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be interesting. But if you're an Arkansas fan today, you're pretty doggone happy with what happened, because Cal will go and immediately raise the level of talent there no matter what. And he's a proven winner. And that is it's not the Kentucky job, mind you, but it's a really good job. One of the better ones, I think, in the SEC.
I think that I think you're spot on about the job itself. And I think this will be good for Cal. I like Cal a lot. I also acknowledge, just seeing it firsthand over the last few years, there was a different vibe with the way Kentucky was playing. And people wanted to blame everything on the one and dones. As I pointed out, for those that don't follow the sport closely, his best two players this year were transfers, were 22, 23, 24 years old, and Reeves and Mitchell. The team veterans on it. That's not the only thing that was going wrong with Kentucky in the postseason. They just weren't playing well. They weren't performing well. You can't blame that all on one and dones. And I do think his roster construction will be different at Arkansas. He's going to get $5 million, if you believe reports, in NIL money. But I don't think they're just going to go, hey, let's get 5 one-and-dones this year. I think he's learned a little bit from that. And I think this boost of adrenaline, and keep this in mind, everywhere he's been, he's taken his teams to the Final Four. So there's no reason to think that he can't have success at Arkansas. I think it's good for everybody. Just before we close the subject on this, as far as Kentucky, Nate Oates has already given a hard no. Dan Hurley's already given a hard no. Again, big game hunting. Every fan base wants their AD to big game hunt and get the biggest name out there. And as I always say, it's kind of a tenet of this program. If you've listened to this show, there's certain terminologies. JC uses the term caged animal syndrome when it comes to a hire. I think that's what Arkansas just did. I'll use terms like path of least resistance when coaches are looking for a particular job. And the grass is not always greener in the case of Kentucky for a lot of established coaches. And Nate Oates has just got a buyout of 18, 19, 20 million, whatever it is. And he's already taken Alabama to the Final Four. Like, he can sleep well at night knowing he's good. Whoever gets the Kentucky job, they want national titles again. They don't want to wait another 10 years. And it's not acceptable to go 5 years, say, without a Final Four. Tubby went 9. Cal has recently gone eight or so since, 2015 was the last one. You take out the COVID year. So immense pressure on whoever gets the job, but the most resources by far of any program in college basketball. You think of the college football elites in terms of resources. You think of what, JC? You think of Ohio State right now, the way they're spending money. You think of Alabama. You think of, I don't know,
Georgia.
Southern Cal. Georgia. Southern
LSU.
Cal's not getting the results, but they've obviously spent a ton of money since hiring Lincoln Riley.
The two major Texas schools.
The oil money school, the oil money belt, if you will. No, but they're all like on the same playing field. No one's on the playing field of Kentucky. No one can't even come close. I don't care who you are. You might think you can, but you can't. But with that comes, we want the results of that. And they haven't been getting them. So anyway, major story there. We've got some major stories coming up. The JC5 on the other side of this timeout on JC and Morgan.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Hey, folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a Mid-Atlantic-based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
Mike.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
It is JC and Morgan, and we are getting into the JC5, presented in part by Nest and Wild Mattress, nestandwild.com, proud sponsor of JC and Morgan. It's like sleeping on top of a cloud without sinking in. I can tell you, I got my Nest and Wild mattress in the mail. It just comes to your door. You take it out of a box, boom, 5 layers of just pure euphoria. Some of the best sleep I've had in years. Brandon Jameson, the founder and CEO, had a dream and a vision. Started up the company in Tupelo. We love local businesses that turn into national hits, and this has become a major national hit. Again, you will not have a better feeling mattress. You will probably not have a better sleep. You don't need all these like fancy remote controls and number settings and heating and what you need is just a good mattress at a good price, and that's exactly what they have. Very competitively priced, but elite performance. Try the hybrid bed. Again, in all sizes. Go to the website. You can order it. It'll be at your door in a few days. nestandwild.com. Speaking of comfortable, I'm going to sit back, get comfortable for another installment of the JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
All right, number 1, right off the bat, considering last night, you mentioned the Big East, UConn winning the national title, second straight. They're a powerhouse. Mike, I think the best thing they did was get back in the Big East for basketball, for their men's basketball program. Mm-hmm. The American didn't make much sense for them. Your thoughts on schools that just like stop chasing the cash cow in football? And I'm going to bring up UMass because UMass just left the Atlantic 10 to go to the MAC for football.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know, that's going to hurt UMass basketball. It's a weaker league. Your thoughts about that? Are there some schools that just say, look, man, we're investing in other sports around here, or is it just that the money's so great with football? You got to still let that drive the bus.
I can't wait to see our our old buddy Frank Martin with that back-to-back road trip in Kent, Ohio, and Athens, Ohio, to take on the Golden Flashes and Miami of Ohio. What is their mascot? I should know because I've done games there.
Red Hawks.
The Red Hawks, yeah. It used to be something else, right? It was a politically incorrect name.
Redskins.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it. Yes, to your point. Look, I get it. You want the football dollars. Look, UConn's done well in their new space on football. I had them in a bowl game a couple of years ago. Jim Mora Jr.'s done some nice stuff, but it's always going to be a basketball school. And UMass hasn't found the glory. Speaking of Cal, all comes back to Cal today. The last time they really tasted that kind of success is when Cal was there. It helps when you have guys like Marcus Camby in your lineup. But it's a slippery slope. We all know football can be the cash cow in the right circumstance. Although I got to tell you, and we'll get more into this as the weeks go on, that it pretty soon, if you don't wind up in the Big Ten or the SEC, I think it could be really, really chilly on the financial front. I just don't know how those other leagues are going to be able to compete, particularly the Group 5. They have to almost hope for another TV deal. They're all signed up pretty much, I think. But, to answer your question, the grass is not always greener, and sometimes you got to go where you belong. I think UConn has found their sweet spot. They're much better in football than they were a couple of years ago when they hit the abyss. And in basketball, obviously, they are as good as it gets right now.
Number 2.
Okay, so on that note, if you read about these super conference people, I don't know where they meet, the Hall of Justice or someplace. It didn't seem like this was it seemed like a bunch of people that were known but not necessarily movers and shakers. I read where Big Ten and SEC had canceled meetings with them or whatever. So here's my question: do you think they thought this out? Because the concept is they love this relegation thing, which I think is a relegation is a very American kind of meritocracy kind of thing. When you're talking about our society and economy and all that, it's a very European type of thing when it comes to sports. You don't do that. I mean, name somebody who's been kicked out. Even Major League Baseball, they'll buy the franchise and move it somewhere before they'll kick a team out. And it's unprecedented in college sports. You have to go back ways, a long way away. So, do you think they thought this out, Mike? And I'll use this example. So the concept is you have like 9 Power 5 and Notre Dame teams, right? Or conferences, of 10. And then you have a 10 with a group of 5. Well, here's my problem with that. What we just talked about, a group of 5 don't have money. So if you take the top 10 in group of 5, that expands like everywhere from Boise, Idaho, to Coastal Carolina and Myrtle Beach, to Troy, to Fresno State, to UNLV would have been in there this past year. And so if you're going to put all those teams in one division, that's going to be an insane amount of travel costs for them. So is that fair? So my question, considering they got media, do you think these people have thought it through?
No, I honestly think it's much to do about nothing, because the people that run the sport are not going to relinquish the power, and the people that run the sport are Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti right now. Make no mistake about it. There's nobody else even in the room. So if I understand correctly, JC, that this kind of third party is offering to run stuff, right? And they'll shell out a bunch of money and they'll run the playoff for football, and they'll take care of it's almost like hiring it's like hiring an accountant, I guess, to do all your financial work for you, and then he gets a cut. They're not doing that. All these kind of harebrained schemes and ideas, if it doesn't pass through the desk of Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti with their stamp of approval, then it's much to do about nothing. It's talk show fodder. It's story fodder. for web hits because none of them are seeing the light of day in terms of the people that matter are not buying in on this. So I've seen a couple of these now, and I think the only thing that's infinitely true is that the SEC and Big Ten are not done expanding, and we're going to get to a point where if you're not in one of those two conferences, you're at a major disadvantage. And then the Big 12 and the ACC, should it survive, would be the next tier. And then tier 3 might as well be 1AA. Might as well be 1AA. That's how I see it.
I'm with
Number
you.
3.
All right, Dan Orlovsky. You've worked with him before, Dan.
I like Dan.
Yeah. Okay. So he had one of his latest takes on the draft and said that Jaden Daniels, your Heisman Trophy pick, Mike, from LSU, Go Tigers, is the best quarterback in the draft. Can you make an argument for Jaden Daniels going to my Chicago Bears over Caleb Williams?
No, I don't think that's going to be the pick. I think it's going to be Caleb Williams. And I know you're not a big believer in Caleb, and I'm not sure how I feel about Caleb. But the people that do this for a living, they are just 100% convinced that he's the closest thing to Pat Mahomes since Pat Mahomes. In terms of arm talent, enough athletic ability. He's not like this, he's not Lamar Jackson running the ball. You could make the argument Drake May is a better pure runner, but he has just the measurables. It's like a pitcher that throws 100 miles an hour but has an ERA in the college game of over 5. He's still going to be a first-round draft pick. For those that watched, like I did, Caleb Williams mess the bed against Notre Dame and not look overly impressive in some other games, you're like, wait a minute, this is the best thing since sliced bread? Not every college quarterback wins the Heisman Trophy. Well, he won one, but not every one of them are just statistical phenoms and play for national titles and can't do any wrong. That's what Daniels was last year. You could make the argument that's close to what Drake May was the year before when he was, the belle of the ball. I'm convinced Caleb Williams is going to go number 1. Do I know he's going to be great at the next level? I don't know. It wasn't that long ago Orlovsky was saying, don't be surprised if Drake May goes number 1. Now people have cooled off on Drake, and it's almost like this feeding frenzy of negativity on Drake May because he made some bad throws. He made some bad decisions last year at North Carolina. Now I would argue that he didn't have the supporting cast. And remember, I did the spring game for both North Carolina and LSU last year, so I saw both these guys up close and personal. I know that the personnel that all three of these guys were working with, you can't compare what Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels were working with. Jaden Daniels got like 2 top 10 NFL wide receivers, a good offensive line, good backs, everything. Caleb Williams, even though they underachieved at Southern Cal, they had the best wide receiver transfer on that team. They had talent around him. Drake May had very little. So I don't know. I don't know who's going to wind up being number 1. Those are going to be the top 3 quarterbacks. And now there's this surge by J.J. McCarthy. And we all know that the offense did not feature J.J. McCarthy throwing the football. But that doesn't mean he's not incredibly skilled, which he is. And then Bo Nix, people at Auburn are like, wait a minute, I thought he was no good. Now he's going in the first round. Who's going to wind up being the best in 3 years? I really don't know. I think it's going to be this is what I find fascinating, though. College football and NFL, to me, are so interconnected. I love it. This is why I can't get enough of the NFL draft. There was, the Diana Taurasi's and Sue Birds of the world were commenting how, why can't we get people to get excited about Caitlin Clark and these future Gamecock players like a Cardoso in the WNBA? Because people just don't watch the WNBA. I don't know what to tell you. A lot of college basketball fans on the men's side don't watch the NBA. A lot of college baseball fans don't watch MLB. In fact, they just go out of their way to just crap on it. But college football fans in general love watching NFL. And that's what I love about the sport, is that I can't wait to see which one of these guys are going to perform and which one's going to be a flat out bust. And you and I both know there'll be a couple of busts in that bunch. And if it's the Chicago Bears taking Caleb Williams, that'll enhance his chances of being a bust, because that's what they draft.
It's been a decade of bust at quarterback for them.
Yes.
I mean, just terrible.
Number 4.
All right, quickly here. Bill Murray. You know the Bill Murray.
Oh yeah, I've never met him. Would love to.
So
Love
Bill
to play
Murray,
around a golf.
hang out in Charleston for long enough.
He's there all the
Probably
time,
would.
right?
Yeah, he lives there part time. Well, so his son apparently is an assistant coach for Dan Hurley at UConn.
Right.
So in the spirit of that, you're out of this group of Bill Murray movies. Which one is on the Dimer list or approaching it for you?
I like where you're going. Okay.
I know you hadn't seen all of them. Stripes, Ghostbusters, What About Bob, or Groundhog Day?
Stripes. Stripes is a dimer for me. I think either that or Night Shift were the first R-rated movies I ever saw as a kid that was way too young to be watching R-rated movies, but that was what you did as a kid. You bought tickets to a PG movie and you snuck in the R-rated movie, or you just waited for it to go on cable, and you watched it incessantly on cable when your parents were, out of town or whatever. So yeah, Stripes. Ghostbusters is, like, to me, it's a kid movie. I didn't watch any of the follow-ups. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't see all of Groundhog Day. And then what was the other one you threw out there?
What About Bob?
And I'm embarrassed to say I haven't seen that start to finish, but What About Bob I've seen parts of 2 or 3 times. So the only fiver or dimer in there for me is Stripes. That's a dimer. That's what put Bill Murray on the map after SNL.
But
I know you disagree. That's okay.
No, I don't disagree. Actually, that's like number 1 for me.
Oh, you do agree? Okay.
I like all these other movies too. I like
Right.
Ghostbusters. I thought Ghostbusters was cool.
Yeah, it's
but
fine.
I was a little younger than you when it came out, though. So maybe that's
I mean, when that came out, I was 9, and I saw it in the theater. Like, it was funny for a kid. He just slimed me. But as I get older and I watch Ghostbusters now, I'm like, well, this is kind of silly. It's a silly little goofy movie. Stripes is just John
Stripes
Candy
is
is
awesome.
Oxenberger.
Dude, it's amazing. So yeah, it's kind of like you'll still hear me pop out "There Is No Dana, Only Zool" every now and then.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right.
Rick Moranis got beat up in the streets of New York, which is not uncommon
recently.
Now, so prosecute crime, but yeah, he actually was just walking to his apartment, and somebody just randomly started beating the crap out of him. Rick Moranis is not a big guy. Like, beat up on The Rock if he's walking in New York. Don't pick on Rick Moranis.
I was at Disney with my mom and her family, the family last March, and there used to be in Epcot Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. And I started thinking about Rick Moranis. I was like, what the hell happened to him? His wife died and he just retired from acting to raise his kids.
I did not know that.
He's a solid guy. Yeah, he's a solid guy. So
that's awesome. I used to mix him up with Peter Scolari, who was the other bosom buddy with Tom Hanks, was on Newhart. And then his career, like, he just disappeared. I don't even know if he's still alive. But Scolari and Moranis were kind of like, it was like when I was a kid, the two careers, and you could place your money on who was going to be bigger, Tom Hanks or Michael Keaton. They were competing for the same roles. They were both exploding at the same time. Now, I will tell you, to this day, I'm a bigger Michael Keaton fan. I think he's funnier, and he didn't get all Hollywood weird on me. Tom Hanks, immensely talented, back-to-back Oscars. I mean, come on. You go Gump and you go Philadelphia back-to-back. That's showing some range. He's a great actor, but I'm a Keaton guy. I underrated movie, The Founder. Keaton, that's a dimer. Keaton's unbelievable in that, playing the former owner of McDonald's. And he's good in everything. And he was funny as hell, too. Mr. Mom. How many that's a dimer, and that's a Ben Franklin.
Gung Ho,
underrated.
Dude, Gung Ho was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, no, and Night Shift. Night Shift was what put him on the map. Billy Blaze, hilarious. Just saying. All right, number 5.
Number 5.
ESPN releases its top 10 coaches in college football, Mike. Number 10, Ryan Day. Number 9, Lance Leopold. Number 8, Lane Kiffin. Number 7, Steve Sarkisian. 6, Dan Lanning, 5, Mike Norvell, 4, Dabo, 3, Kyle Whittingham, 2, Kalen DeBoer, and 1, Kirby. I don't have a problem with the top 2. I think Lanning is way too high. I think Sark is way too high. I think Kiffin, to a certain extent, is too high. I would have Leopold higher. I would have the coach from Kansas State in here. I just some of these guys to me have a lot to prove, but the JC5 is for me to ask you questions. So your take on this list.
And we'll throw this out to Lugs as well when we have him on next segment. 4 SEC guys, including Sark. Texas is now an SEC school, folks. Get used to it. Ryan Day might be the only guy on this list that could get fired. Ohio State doesn't play for the national championship. I mean, he's rumored to get if they lose to Michigan again, he's gone. He's gone. I don't think there's any question about it. So number 10 could be out of a job in late November. But I don't have a major problem with this. I mean, look, DeBoer. You look at his track record. Some might say, well, how do you put DeBoer? It's his first year at Alabama. Look at what he's done. He's earned that. I've always maintained Kyle Whittingham is one of the most underrated coaches in the history of the sport. I'm glad to see he's getting some love at 3. Dabo clearly is on a downtick, but if you take his work as a whole, what was Clemson before Dabo got there? So he still belongs in the top 10. Norvell, let's see it keeping going. Lanning, little early, but okay. Kiffin on a heater. Leopold Day. I mean, some people would say, okay, who outside that list? And we'll throw this out to Lugs as well. It's too early for Eli Drinkwitz. Give me another 10-11 win season. I'm putting Eli on there. But heck, there's a lot of Missouri fans that wanted him fired before last year. And Brian Kelly of LSU. Look, if Brian Kelly does what I think he'll do, which I think he'll win a national title at LSU at some point, then he'll be on that list. But he's certainly got to do better than what he did last year.
Brian Kelly, though, man, I mean, compared to Dan Lanning, Brian Kelly won national titles at Grand Valley State. He won at Central Michigan. He won at Cincinnati. He won it. He's the all-time wins leader at Notre Dame. And clearly they've taken a step back coaching-wise since he's been gone.
Right.
And I'm like,
no, I'm with you.
Dan Lanning is look. I think the guy's a hell of a coach.
Yeah.
He's just got a little bit more to prove to me.
I agree.
You know,
there's a little more meat on that bone. Before you put Dan Lanning that, I'm with you. All these lists are always primacy, recency bias, right? So whoever's coming off a good year is going to be ranked 10 spots higher than maybe they should. And whoever had an off year, a la Brian Kelly, is going to be 5 to 10 spots below where he should be.
Except Kyle Whittingham, who went 8-5 last year, but he had a massive amount of injuries and still went 8-5. So.
And it's Utah. And it's freaking Utah. Utah ain't bringing in the athletes at the other school. Look at except for Kansas. Look at the other schools on that list. They are set up for recruiting portal success. Utah ain't. And year after year after, like, how many times could he win his conference at Utah? At Utah. And look, I have a friend who's a Utah alum. He'll blister me, eviscerate me for saying these things. Utah's a great story, but they have no business being as good as they are in college football. That's a tribute to Kyle Whittingham. That's what I look for. I look for overachievers. That's what Kyle Whittingham is.
Yeah, as long as he's there too. I mean, we've asked who's going to be the best in the Big 12, the new Big 12. It's probably Utah. I mean, if you're Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State would probably be, Arizona would have been up there had Fish not left. But anyway,
he'll do what he did at the Pac. He'll win the league at some point. All right, we'll share this subject among others. Luginbill's coming in hot. He's coming off the top rope. He's got his hot topic list ready to go. He's not playing around. Tom Luginbill of ESPN on the other side.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. Site Pro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. Site Pro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call Site Pro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
Chicken cock originated in Kentucky, like so many other bourbons. And so the resurrection of it, Paris, Kentucky, that's the county seat of Bourbon County. So much of this whiskey was being made in that Bourbon County, put on ships and barges and shipped down Ohio, down to Mississippi, and got to New Orleans, where it got distributed all over the world. And people kept saying, well, hey, I want some more of that whiskey from Bourbon County. And so that's how bourbon whiskey got its name. And chicken cock originated actually in Paris, Kentucky, which is today Bourbon County.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
All right, welcome back. It is JC and Morgan here on a Tuesday morning. Again, appreciate all of you tuning in live, or eventually you'll catch up with us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Facebook, on Twitter, on iTunes, and everything in between. Friend of the program, the purveyor of many things now, including his shorts on, not his actual physical shorts, but shortcuts. You want to call it on the social media. He is Tom Luginbill of ESPN. Also a proud OG when it comes to the UFL analysis game. And he joins us now from his man cave. I've got one thing to start this interview off with, Luke's. Right. So I can't remember where this was, but you were talking. It might have been one of your shorts that you put out there. You were talking about what's kind of interesting about the UFL is that you pick up, and JC, your guys' brains are wired the same in terms of player evaluation coming out of high school. And you remember some of these 5-star guys that for whatever reason either didn't do well in college or didn't do well in the NFL or both. And they're now littered throughout the UFL. Am I right? So a lot of these players are guys that people like you and JC and others had at 5 stars, but didn't necessarily live up to the billing. So to that, I start this off in my best Quint voice. Well, Luginbill, it shows one thing, my man. So that you college boys that evaluate those high school kids coming out of high school don't have the education enough to admit when you're wrong.
Wow. I don't know, man.
Hooper!
I do.
Yeah, me too.
To say it.
I
tell our staff all the time, guys, you're going to be wrong. So you better own it and you better understand it. And if you believe firmly in a guy and you want to jump on the table for him, cool. I get it. But the percentages don't weigh in your favor. That's the thing in all this. And you're right. I had put out a short about it because it really got me thinking about perspective in this whole recruiting game, right? We become so consumed with, well, why is this guy ranked here? And why does this guy have 5 stars versus 4 stars? And, I'm going through some of these rosters. We're 2 games into the UFL, and I'm seeing Matt Corral, and I'm seeing Adrian Martinez, and I'm seeing Reuben Foster and Jarrett Guarantano and Trey Quinn. And, the list goes on and on. I could Taco Charlton. Guys we all knew, right? And a lot of them did succeed in college, right? And a lot of them did have either a cup of coffee or were highly drafted in the NFL. Great. But it really got me thinking that you have all of these kids so obsessed with where they're ranked. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, you're focused on the wrong thing. If you focus on work, getting better, and playing fast and playing hard and being a great teammate, all of that other stuff will work itself out. It always does. That's just the nature of how your performance will dictate your outcome. And so, I hear kids, and I get it from parents, and I know JC does too all the time. Why don't we have this guy ranked up here, this and that? Like, okay, well, in the moment, it may seem like a big deal. Nobody cares. Like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't know if anybody will truly care if Daylon Mack was a 5-star defensive tackle who's playing defensive tackle right now for the Memphis Showboats in the UFL. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's hard for kids to have that perspective, right? Because they're living in the moment, and everybody, they're getting patted on the back, and everybody's telling them how good they are, and they're trying to compare themselves with everybody else and their peers, and they think it matters so much to their cultural and their public status, when at the end of the day, if they took a step back and said, you know what, if I just worry about what I'm doing, the rest of all of that stuff will handle itself on its own.
I don't know what Jarrett Guarantano is going to do with that 5-star rating there, Lugs. Maybe eat it. All right, that's my last quint. And full disclosure, it's not that you guys don't admit when you're wrong. I just went for the laugh there. And for,
it was beautiful.
For the purposes of
beautiful.
For the purpose of a good Jaws quote, which is a Ben Franklin for all of us.
Well, I'll tell you something, Chiefy. You want me to go out there and find the prospect? I'll find him for 3, but I'll catch him and kill him for 10.
For 10. Living.
That's
the young men's names. You want to go ahead and have a right star evaluation, you can call me, or you can be starving in the summer.
By the way, we haven't even said hello. How's everybody doing?
We're doing great. Mike's let me say
in a good mood.
I'm in a great mood.
He is in a good mood. He's fired up. He's got old school Oakland Raiders. I think that's okay. What is that behind?
That's North Dallas 40. That's Nick
Oh,
Nolte.
what a great movie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, that's another one where I wasn't old enough to see it in the theater. It's an R-rated movie,
Sure.
but I saw it on cable.
Oh, yeah.
Like 100 times. It was one of the first football movies I ever saw. Maybe the first one.
By the way, you want to know a great football movie that was ahead of its time when it comes to profiling the high-profile, top-level guy that goes from the penthouse to the outhouse and what that can do to somebody, which is basically a complete reflection of where we are at right now.
Oh, is that the one with Dennis Quaid?
Yes. Everybody's All-American.
Everybody's All-American, yeah.
Dennis Quaid and John Goodman. And it is literally the quintessential movie about life lessons and football and being at the top of the mountain and what do you do and how do you respond when you're not anymore?
Right.
And what that can do to you, your life, your family, your kids, your well-being. It's a great movie.
That's pre-Ozempic John Goodman in that movie.
Oh, yeah, way, bro. Way pre.
He's lost about like 200 pounds. I like him better as the portly guy. But and then Dennis Quaid played a similar character in the Oliver Stone movie. Which
Any Given Sunday?
Any Given Sunday, he played like the washed-up quarterback who's got, his body's breaking down, and it's just like, cut me, Mick, get me back out there, trying to fight off Willie Beeman.
Beeman.
Steaming Willie Beeman. By the way, Luke, your mic Can we get that mic a little closer? I want people to hear your dulcet tones at an optimal level.
I apologize. I've got it right here.
That's
How
better.
about, is that better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
boys, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we can still hear you, but
you can hear you fine. It's just,
I just want you to have. There we go. Yes, the vocal. So I teased your appearance. We had this group chat, and what I love about your appearances, amongst many other things, is that you've always got something you're bringing to the table. Like, I don't even have to ask you any questions. We got the Luke's hot button list right off the top. So I'm going to throw you 3 things that I know you're fired up about.
Okay.
And then we'll get into some other stuff. But right off the bat, I know this is when Jay Leno used to go on David Letterman. He did a segment called "What's your beef?" What's my beef, Dave? I'll tell you what I'm fired up about. This is my beef. So this is your beef. Most important NIL topic that no one is addressing. This is something that's kind of you're a little bit fired up about. What are we missing here with the NIL and the topic of which?
I am actually fired up about this because I think from a sheer numbers perspective, this could potentially happen to an awful lot of young people, and we're all going to hate to see it. It's going to be an unfortunate byproduct, and here we go. So a little less than 4% of our population will actually make an NFL roster. The number is smaller than that, making one for 3 years or more. So let's assume, for the sake of this discussion, that 96%, which is around what it is, of every college football player at any level will go on to another career, no matter how successful they are, okay, in college football. All-Americans, 2-time all-conference players, Heisman finalists, will go on to play to a different profession. So what's going to happen to the kids that, let's just say, get off to a fast start in college football, or maybe go before that in recruiting, and they start to generate income and revenue in NIL? And let's just say they don't have a great support structure around them, right? Don't have great guidance. Maybe aren't familiar with investing, taxes, something as simple as saving, having the forethought to look further than what's right in front of them. And all of a sudden, this player, could be any player hypothetically, ends up making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. Let's just say I'm a low end. And they play 3 or 4 years of college football. They get their degree, which is great. We all want that. They don't play professional football. And now they're entering the workforce at a job that might pay them $40,000. What are they going to do? And who's there to help them? Because this is going to happen to a ton of guys. A ton of guys. Now, there's going to be a group that is going to have a great support structure. They're going to have great representation. They will have opened IRAs or Roth IRAs, or they will set up mutual funds, and they will look to the bigger picture. All right. But what about the guys that aren't equipped to do that? And how are you supposed to adjust from having all of this attention and all of this money flooding in because you were really good at something, but the percentages don't weigh in your favor to continue on that path of professional football? And now you're applying for jobs with the rest of the general population of new 45, 50, 60 grand. And you've been living this life. Like, does anybody think that's healthy? Like, does anybody think that that's the way we want to go and the path that we want to go down? And I'm quite honestly, I'm concerned about it. I am, because I want all of these guys to succeed. And this is where I think Nick Saban, for his comments in front of Congress, was very unfairly judged, because I believe this is exactly what he was talking about. He didn't come right out and say it, but what he did say is, preparing these guys for something beyond football, and not just looking right straight in front of you for 2 to 3 years, Because what are we going to do when all of a sudden you're out on the street at 22, 23 and football's not there and nobody is paying for your services anymore?
Right.
That's not where we want to go. That's not what anybody wanted in all of this. And I it's not being addressed. I think I personally, this is what I believe should happen. And you could apply this to the general student population. And you can either do this through a course requirement, or you could require it like you require study hall or like you require rehab. And you have a financial literacy course or a program that everybody is mandated and required to attend to provide you with a structure and a blueprint and a plan. Now, listen, everybody's open to free will. Nobody's forcing you to do anything. But if you're smart, you will. If you're thinking long-term, you will. But right now, we're not doing that. And I think that's dangerous. That's my first pet peeve.
I'm with you there, Tom. It's the college football programs, especially at the places with the funding like Alabama or any athletic department. Right. They have the resources in place for mental health, for physical health, for training, for nutrition, whatever. This is a huge part of it. And it's so easy for the colleges to do.
Yes.
Because it's right there.
Professors on hand.
You got everybody there. I mean, and I'll take it a step further with you there. I think the general student body could use some stuff. I mean, I wish I would have taken something like that in college and been forced to do it and forced to learn, because a lot of the stuff we teach in college now is not even based on common sense anymore, you know?
No.
And so you get out of college and you're like, I'm floating around with no common sense. You know, I don't know how to balance a checkbook, but I have a degree. And I'm with you there, man. I think that would be that part of it. The NCAA could easily do it. The problem is what they do is they'll look at it and go, well, that's an extra benefit for athletes. And they don't.
Is there any such thing as an extra benefit?
And I'm like, yeah. So you can imagine this guy make he's on his own with his $500,000 that he got from the collective, right?
I would love the NCAA to tell a school, no, you cannot provide financial literacy through your program. We will not allow that. Absolutely not. I mean, think about this. If we lined up 85 scholarship players and we asked them to describe what compound interest is, do you think any of them could do it?
I'm not sure if I can do that.
5
unless they're like an accounting.
So I'm going to give you a prime example here. Right now, there are mutual fund savings apps out there. I use one called Wealthfront. Okay, my son's getting ready to leave high school and go to college, and we've taught him through a bank account, the savings account. He automatically puts money out of his allowance into his savings account, so he starts saving. And right now, there are apps out there. PayPal does it. Affirm does it. Wealthfront does it, whatever. They're offering a 5% return. 5% return on your money with no penalty to withdraw, unlimited deposits, and it's FDIC insured.
Who is this, Tom? I didn't know we were getting financial advice. Who's offering this?
Wealthfront.
I haven't gotten 5% in like 15 years.
Okay, so now think about this. Let's just say you were making money as an NIL guy. Let's just say somehow you pulled up $200,000 and you put that in a no-risk, high-yield savings account at 5%. Just think about what the compound interest on $200,000 would be per month during the course of somebody's 3 to 4 year college career. Just on that. Imagine what it would be on 400,000. Imagine what it would be on 600,000. We could do better here, guys. And I think that we could set these players up for life. They get their degree. They have the opportunity to start off at a place where they could put a down payment on a home one day. They can start a family. They don't go into debt. But we're not talking about that. All we focus on NIL is how much can I get? How much can I get? How much can I earn? What are you going to give me? You know?
Yeah, it's so true. I'm good friends with a former SEC football player, and he was a good enough player. Like, he played. He wasn't just on the bench, but he knew he wasn't an NFL guy.
Right.
He now runs a business, very successful. And every now and then when we chat, he says, you know, Mike, because he feels bad for his teammates that also didn't make it, but they had no idea what to do at 22 years old when the NFL wasn't calling. And the stories are just like it's like a scared straight program. You could be this guy. And he said, Mike, I don't understand it. every college athlete should be required to take a personal finance course, which is kind of what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right? And it made so much sense to me. And to JC's point, heck, I think we all should have been required to take that. I mean, I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting, so I took a lot of journalism classes, English classes.
Yeah.
I took 2 math classes because that's all I had to take.
Right.
2 math classes, and nothing regarding personal finance or how to set you up for success financially the rest of your life. Shouldn't we be teaching that?
Well, and to your point, the example you're using with the former player and some of his teammates, those guys weren't doing what I'm talking about. They weren't earning hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So they're not having to switch a lifestyle, but they are having to start a new life.
That's
and
right.
then they've got, that's the part in all of this. I can't imagine the shell shock that's going to come to some of these guys and gals, could be whatever the sport is, when real life hits from a salary perspective.
That's a great point. Our guest is Jim Kramer, and if you have any questions about your 401k, give us a call, 1-800-INVEST-NOW, 1-800. No, that was good. I did not see that coming, but I like that angle very much so. And again, for those that don't know, Tom is the son of a coach. I mean, these are the kind of lessons that you would like more coaches to instill. And Nick Saban, no matter what people want to think, Nick wasn't just after his own personal good and didn't give a crap about players. And he truly, you and I both been around the man. He absolutely cared about his guys and absolutely wanted them to succeed and was not against players making money. He was against what we have now, which is utter chaos, and the whole system is kind of broken.
No doubt.
But instead, the people that enough is, and there's never enough, they wanted to paint that as just like an anti-capitalist, just stupid stuff, stupid arguments. All right, number 2, Joe Milton. I'm not going to read your entire text here. Stop talking about Joe Milton's arm. Okay. I went on this show and any other a year ago before the season started when, quite frankly, the Jordan Rodgers of the world were telling you he was the best athlete in college football, the most gifted quarterback. And I'm just like, I've seen other guys that can throw it 80 yards before, but that can't hit a 15-yard out or a skinny post, and they struggle. And that's exactly what happened with Tennessee football and Joe Milton. It's a classic case of just you're not understanding everything that goes into the position you played, Tom. So how much has that been driving you crazy when you hear combine? I'm telling you what, this guy's got a cannon. He's got a missile.
Well, and it's not just that. It's all of the social media posts of him having a workout where the last throw is, let's see how far I can throw it.
Yeah.
Who cares? Literally. Have you ever watched an NFL game where they say, hey, the starting quarterback's going to be the guy that can throw the ball the longest?
Right.
Right? Listen, full disclosure, he has been blessed with God-given physical ability that very few people have been afforded. Mm-hmm. Height, weight, hand size, arm length, good enough speed, a rocket for an arm. I understand all of that, and I can appreciate it, okay? But we now have a big sample size of who Joe Milton is as a player, going all the way back to Michigan, actually going all the way back to before that through high school recruiting. We had him ranked because of his physical attributes, but we didn't have him ranked where he could have been based off of production. Because I don't care if it's the high school, college, or the NFL level. If we lined up all 32 GMs, all 32 head coaches, and said, what is the number 1 or 2 or 3 most important trait playing the quarterback position, not a single one of them would say arm strength. Not one. They would tell you some combination of these 3 things: accuracy, decision-making, and the ability to process, which I would call aptitude. Mm-hmm. That's what they would focus on. I'm not claiming that Joe Milton can't process. That's not what I'm claiming. But what we've seen through a sample size so far is that he is wildly erratic. He is wildly inaccurate. And he has kind of been a one-speed guy, right? That arm strength, for all of its glory downfield, there's not a lot of nuance to Joe Milton. So for me, I'm looking at past guys that have played in this system, right? Dylan Gabriel, who else? We could list a bunch of them. Hendon Hooker, Drew Lock for Josh Heupel at Missouri, on and on and on. And traditionally, every one of those guys is somewhere in the 68 to 70% completion range. Joe Milton was 64, which isn't a terrible completion range, but for guys plugging into that offense, it's on the low end. If you lead up to the Tennessee tenure at Michigan, it's in the 40s and 50s. So I feel like we've got enough of a sample size to say, okay, if we're watching him play the game on tape and you're breaking every single thing down, at the end of the day, does it matter that he can throw the ball 80 yards?
No.
And I'm not knocking necessarily Joe Milton, but we're placing all of this attention on something that literally could set him up for failure, because that's all we're talking about with him.
Right. What else do we have to talk about? Because there's nothing else there when you look at last year at Tennessee. And these guys break down a ton of tape. I mean, even a number like completion percentage, if you dink and dunk your way to 70%, that's not the same as – so they're looking at, okay, on 3rd and 7, how accurate is he there?
Right.
When you got to make throws downfield and tight windows, and everybody in the stadium knows you're throwing the ball in that situation. Look, I think the term I'm gonna jump into your pool for a second here, Lugs, because JC will tell you I'm an NFL draft nerd, and while I am not qualified to give the type of analysis as former players like yourself can, I am obsessed with this, and the quarterback position is certainly one I'm obsessed with. Like, I covered Jimmy Clausen when he got drafted by the Carolina Panthers, 2nd round pick. And we're doing the preseason games, and within the first 5 throws, I'm looking at my partner, Mike Rucker, and I'm like, this guy can't throw the ball in the NFL. His arm is entirely too weak. How did he get the 2nd round? And he fizzled out in a couple of years.
Right.
So you have to have some strength in your arm, but where I would say the difference is you're never throwing it 80 yards. That's a Hail Mary at the end of the half or the end of the game. Guys like Marino and Elway, Jim Kelly, holy class of 1983. These are guys that had strong arms, but they threw it strong in tight spaces in the intermediate routes.
Right.
That's what's separate. They didn't just constantly go, okay, run a go route, and I'm going to just throw it 60, 70 yards.
The ball placement in tight coverage in that 12 to 18-yard area is what separated guys like that.
Absolutely.
Right? When the ball needed to be right here or needed to be right there, that's where it was.
That's where Brady was.
That's where
all the time.
Right?
That's Tom Brady became the GOAT doing that.
Yeah. And then you look at guys like Chase Daniel, Ty Detmer, okay, really limited in terms of physical attributes, off the charts on the aptitude side and the accuracy side. So they stick around, right?
Right. Yeah, no, we've had a guy on here a number of times, Shane Matthews.
Oh, yeah.
Shane Matthews was a backup for the most part for 15 years in the NFL after being an all-SEC quarterback at Florida. Never had the strongest arm, but damn, he was accurate, and the aptitude was off the charts. Learned from Spurrier, not a bad guy to learn from. You can make a hell of a living doing that. Yeah. And then the guys that have all of the combined, the Josh Allens of the world, and Josh Allen didn't just become Josh Allen overnight. He struggled, and he still makes some bad mistakes.
Sure.
But, man, when he's on, that is the complete package for sure. All right, good stuff there. Number 3, finally, Lincoln Riley on the hot seat, and the schedule is brutal. Let's talk about Mr. Riley. We just, and we're going to throw this at you in closing. The ESPN came out with a top 10 coaches in college football list. Lincoln Riley is nowhere on it, nor should he be. A few years ago at Oklahoma, he probably would be on everybody's list. So how do you see things shaking out there in SoCal with Lincoln?
So the reason why he's not on it isn't because of anything that has to do with the offensive side of the football. It's the fact that SC cannot make strides and improve on defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, the bottom line, guys, you go back to that 2022 season where they went to the Cotton Bowl. They were horrendous on defense, but they were plus 22 in turnover margin. Like, that's a statistical anomaly. That does not happen. That happens like once every 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. So this last year, they didn't have that stroke of luck on the turnover side, and Caleb could no longer save them. All right. So it could only save them to a certain point. Well, now you go from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, which I would term a non-line of scrimmage league to a line of scrimmage league. And here's what their schedule looks like. They open with LSU. They play host to Utah State. Then they've got Michigan. And they go on a run in the Big Ten. On the road, it's Wisconsin, at Minnesota, Penn State, at Maryland. Then they get Rutgers wedged in at Washington after that. Their only saving grace in this schedule is that they don't play Oregon. All right. And they do not play Ohio State, but they've got Nebraska, at UCLA, and Notre Dame. Like, this team, unless they see like a 50% uptick on the defensive side of the ball, it could be 6-6. Like, is that keeping him around? Is that why he's tired there?
Well, I mean, I don't know what his buyout and everything is off the top of my head.
They're a private school. They don't care.
But I mean, how do you justify keeping him at that point? Because the Big Ten is not going to lighten up.
Yeah. And
right?
We're assuming Miller Moss is going to play the way he played in the Holiday Bowl every week.
Not sure if I can assume that.
I can't yet, not on that sample size.
Yeah.
But by the way, I love Miller Moss. I love Carson Beck. I love Garrett Nussmeier, because every one of them dudes stuck it out, competed, waited for their turn. And you know what? It's all going to work out for them.
You mentioned Carson Beck. What other quarterbacks in the SEC specifically do you like? We were throwing this around the other day. And SEC quarterback. Beck is kind of chalkish. I could make the argument Quinn Ewers might wind up having a better year. Good. NFL scouts love him. He just has to be more consistent.
Yeah. I would say Carson Beck is more consistent than Quinn Ewers is right now, and that's off of just one season. And I think that's fair. Don't think we know yet at Auburn. I think Jalen Milroe, depending on the week, is a really dangerous weapon, right? Yeah. Is he the natural passer that a Michael Penix Jr. is going to be, or a Jake Haener that Caleb DeBoer had at Fresno State? Probably not. I don't know if he's ever going to be that. But there's a lot of proof in the pudding with Caleb DeBoer coaching quarterbacks, and I know that. Mm-hmm. So you got to feel good about the ups. I mean, Jackson Dart, I think, has to be in the conversation, and he's going to have a lot of really, really good weapons around him. So that's a big one to me. If Connor Wegman stays healthy, I think he's shown when he's healthy, he's really talented and really, I think, got a chance to be very, very good. The question seems to be all on the SEC East side. Is DJ Lagway going to be the guy as a true freshman from Florida, and does he have enough around him? Who's the guy at South Carolina? Who's the guy at Kentucky? Right? I mean, I think there's 3 to 4 or 5 guys. Jackson Arnold's got a chance at Oklahoma to emerge. So we'll see.
Kentucky probably Brock Vandergriff, I would think. South Carolina's Norris Sellers, who I'm personally very high on.
Good. I think Graham Mertz holds on to the job at Florida. I don't think
that's my thing. I think the guy could 70% of his passes last year.
I know.
He wasn't the problem. Everything else was.
At one point last year, that team was 5-2, and like nobody even realized it.
Yeah,
they beat Tennessee. I mean, I think Vanderbilt's got the quarterback and the OC from New Mexico State. I think if you're Vanderbilt, that's a good plan.
Yeah,
New Mexico State under Jerry Kill, they're designed to beat teams that have a talent advantage, right? Their offense is that designed to do it. So if you're Vandy, why not? Why not?
Do you notice none of us mentioned Nico?
I like Nico.
To me, I'll say this. That is the most plug-and-play offense maybe in the history of college football. Like, every time somebody departs, another guy jumps in and does the exact same thing. Like, it's like boom, 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 boom. And we could go all the way back to Mike Leach at Texas Tech, Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, Dana Holgerson at Houston and West Virginia, Bryles at Baylor. Okay. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Josh Heupel at UCF, Josh Heupel at Missouri, Josh Heupel at Tennessee. Bing, bang, boom. Another guy. Plug and play. They all do the same thing. Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold's going to do it too. You watch. It's crazy. So I think there's my point is I think there's an assumption that he's going to be really good in that offense.
Well, you're still part of the recruiting coverage on ESPN. Were you blown away by his tape? And we do have a sample size somewhat in college. We have a few games to kind of sink our teeth into. What do you think?
So I really enjoyed him athletically and physically coming out. I thought he was very, very talented. Truth be told, and I could be proven wrong on this, okay? And I likely will be proven wrong on this. But throughout the recruiting process, I just felt like there was a little too much attention being paid towards NIL and getting caught up in that, right? And that being such a focal point of the whole process. And somebody say, well, that's not a bad thing, okay? But you have to have a certain level of maturity if you're going to engage in that world to understand that for what I'm receiving, I better be producing. So if he goes out and he has, let's just say he has a year like he had against Iowa in the bowl game, by all means, he'll be worth every penny. So I have no issue with that. I have no issue with that. But throughout the recruiting process, and that's a high, like if you're a money booster or a collective guy, or you're somebody that's willing to just throw money around to recruits, your rate of return on doing it with a high school quarterback is so extremely low that it might be the most dangerous proposition in all of betting or gambling or whatever you want to call it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I mean, get somebody you can hit, because you can now paying for portal guys when they're proven is different. Yeah. And look at the number of transfer quarterbacks in college football that have made huge impacts even before we had NIL and the portal. We go back to Oklahoma and all those cats when
they'd all played.
Joe Burrow, I mean, was a transfer. I mean, the list goes on at that position. I think you hit the nail on the head with Tennessee's offense, though, Tom, a little while back. Accuracy. Hendon Hooker in that offense was rarely like it was almost rare how accurate
he was robotic
on his deep balls. I mean,
69% completion percentages last year.
That's
you're right. To your point, Mike, he wasn't dinking and dunking.
He wasn't dinking and dunking. He was throwing
like
it deep downfield
last year.
Yeah.
Michael Penix is. I don't know if I've ever seen a college football player throw and complete the deep ball as effortlessly as Michael Penix does.
He was as good as, I think he lost a lot of money in that national championship game, but in the regular season, there was nobody who threw the football better.
Dude, if he makes 2 throws in that national championship game that he usually routinely makes, we might be having a different discussion.
Yeah.
If he wasn't as old as he is and didn't have the injury history he's got, he might be the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
I agree. I agree. Unfortunately, and of course, he had guys in his face on virtually every play. To be fair to him, they were overmatched on the line of scrimmage, and it showed. I got to ask you. I know this is going to get you fired up.
What?
I'm not even going to ask it in a question form. I'm going to say 2 words. Colorado football.
Are you just trying to get me in trouble?
Don't worry. This will never reach Colorado Nation or
it can reach Colorado Nation. But here's what I will say. Here's what I will say about that. Okay. I should have said the term depth instead of the term roster, meaning that I still think they have one of the worst rosters in college football, but maybe not as bad as UMass. But I do think, and I think it was proven last year, that their depth was horrendous. Okay. Now, also, in my defense, there's where I was wrong. Nobody played my entire quote. My entire quote was, they've upgraded at quarterback. They've upgraded at wideout and corner. Okay. Here we go. And I quote, they are so devoid of talent and depth in the offensive and defensive front that I don't know how they're going to keep their quarterback upright. That was the entirety of it that never got played.
I don't think what you said was honestly that controversial. They weren't that good of a football team last year.
At the time it was because everybody was just talking about this wild experiment, right? And it's almost like, well, if you say anything that goes against supporting Coach Prime or Colorado football, no matter how truthful it may be,
well, that's a real
you're the bad guy.
Well, and you got to remember the people that are trashing someone like yourself or anybody that said anything remotely negative about Deion Sanders, many of the people that are racing to the keyboard on Twitter,
Oh, yeah.
these are not college football fans.
No.
These are Deion fans.
Yes.
These are fans. They look at him as this rebel force that's upsetting the apple cart of how it's always been in college football. And don't look now, but the new wave is what is going to be Deion Sanders. And they don't want to hear any dissenting point of view. And even you watch the national media. I mean, I thought it was embarrassing at times. The way he was covered last year. I mean, it's a nonstop slurp fest. I mean, you got your son selling merchandise in the locker room at half as you blow a 28-point, 29-point lead. Anybody else would be eviscerated nationally.
Oh, first of all, they'd either be suspended or removed from the team.
Well, yes. And the coach, who just happens to be the dad, would have been crucified.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, hey, man, look, he's the future. And again, I've always said this, and I think you're in agreement with this, and I think JC's in agreement with this. I don't sit there and root for or against Deion Sanders.
I don't either. I don't care. I don't have a horse
I don't care.
in the race.
Exactly. I don't care.
I like Colorado. I mean,
I like Colorado, and I said this at the time when this was all being rumored. It's like a reality show that I actually watch. I don't watch a lot of reality shows. I wanted this to happen. I wanted Deion to get a Power 5, now Power 4 job. And I wanted to see how it worked. And if it was a train wreck, I was going to be entertained. And if it was a great success, I was going to be entertained. Yep. I couldn't lose. Right. So I wasn't going to lose sleep over it either way. Yeah. But some of the people that are, so pulling for this as like the anti-establishment hire, they don't want to hear you give any dissenting point of view. And if they do, they're really good at being like social media bullies. But I'm at a point in my life, I don't care.
Or you're automatically
you're a hater, right? It's personal.
You're disrespecting them. It's
yeah.
No, it's not. It's an observation. Like, for example, last year, and I don't know how much different it is this year because coming into this, I wasn't looking at Colorado's roster, but everybody was talking about Travis Hunter, Shurburtt Sanders, Shiloh Sanders, Dylan Edwards, Cormani McClain. Nobody was talking about the offensive linemen from Southern Utah or Maine or Rhode Island. Nobody was talking about those guys.
Right.
And like, wait a minute, man, this is Power 5 football. This is big time football at the most important positions you have outside of quarterback. And I'm sorry, but you're not playing with Power 5 players. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen over the course of time is exactly what happened. It caught up with them. Now, to your point, whether it was a failure, whether it was a success, you're going to be entertained either way. I still don't think we know the answer to that question.
Right.
I don't think we're at the end. Like, we don't know if at the end of this year, is this going to be a failure or a success? Is this going to be 4-8 again or 5-7, or could they tip that scale and get on the winning side of 6-6? I don't think anybody truly knows. But don't say they can't do it because that's against the rules.
Again, yes. Whatever happens, just know Deion is a brilliant mind who is revolutionizing. I heard this multiple times. Revolutionizing the sport of college football. I must have missed the revolution on that.
I kind of hate it.
You know what, JC? You know what's kind of helped him? Is had they not changed the transfer rule where guys could transfer multiple times, all of those guys that he brought in and their staff brought in, they'd be stuck with.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That kind of saved that change in the rule, put him in a much better position right now than he was in 5 months ago.
I have a bad feeling for them looking at their schedule. I mean,
schedule's rough,
you got North Dakota State coming to town for the first game. Never schedule that. Never. Why?
Never.
Then you're
no win situation.
Who has a better roster right now? Not quarterback. Who has a better roster?
I can't say. I don't know. Probably Colorado's probably got more difference makers. North Dakota State lines of scrimmage are probably just as good. I mean, you basically scheduled, the Ohio State of FCS. So, and then at Nebraska, at Colorado State, who almost cut them last year.
They should have beat them last year.
Baylor comes in at UCF, then open date, then K-State, then at Arizona. Dude, that could be 0-8. Yeah. And they're not terrible. I mean, all of those teams could legitimately beat college. And I'm curious to see if he sticks, especially after Shurburtt leaves. Yeah. I'm convinced this may be, my gut is this is the greatest helicopter parent situation of all time. And what tipped me out after he fired Sean Lewis last year, who's I think a hell of an offensive coach.
Sean Lewis might have been the only reason they were any good.
And he demotes him and blames him for his son. I'm like, that is a circa fifth grade when Chuck Miller put his son on the all-star team over me when I hit 6 dingers for the West Side Dodgers type of deal, I think. But I'm just like, I looked at that. I was like, really? That's the problem is Sean Lewis. Come on, man. The guy won at Kent State. He was respectable. That's one of the worst jobs in the country. He's at San Diego State now where he'll do big things. Yeah. I was like, man, so I don't know. It is an interesting schedule, though. It does not really set up for early success. Just how it kind of flows.
Lugs, where are you this weekend? What UFL destination? Where can we find you?
I'm actually back at Michigan. I've got my prep's a little lighter this week because I had Memphis and Houston week 1, Michigan and Birmingham this past weekend, and now I got Houston at Michigan. Okay. So I've had both teams in the last 2 weeks, and I'll tell you, man, I haven't been through a lot of iterations of this. Going back to NFL Europe in the late 90s, the consolidation of the 2 leagues, the reduction of teams, and making that player pool that much more talented. Mm-hmm. The football is so far and away better than the 2020 and the 2023 XFL seasons and the 2022 and 2023 USFL seasons that it's been fun to watch. I think by the time we get to midseason and beyond, this thing's going to be a slugfest.
We're old enough to remember as kids, I watched the USFL. In fact, you mentioned Michigan. I remember Anthony Carter was part of the first USFL championship team. Mm-hmm. The Michigan Panthers defeated somebody. And was that no, Jim Mora was the coach of the Stars. I can't remember who coached Michigan, but they won the first title. Mm-hmm. But what I remember about that, again, just as a young age, before the NFL had instant replay, the USFL did. Before NFL had the 2-point conversion, USFL did. The UFL has that quirky kickoff. It's now going to be in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think eventually that's going to trickle down to college.
Oh, it's going to.
Right? Because the safety and so a lot of these things you see on a UFL game, the experimental rules and whatnot, they are going to trickle their way to the NFL and trickle their way down to college football. That's one thing I could see happening.
To be honest with you, I hope the extra point, 3-tiered extra point does. It is awesome because it changes the game in the sense that you're never actually out of it, right? You think it's a 2-possession game, but if you go for 3, it's not on a 1 score.
How far does a 3-pointer have to be?
From the 10-yard line. So 2.5 for 1.
Okay.
2 points is 3 is the 5-yard line, and 3 points is at the 10-yard line. And so, and to your point, like all the advancements over the years, you know where the Skycam debuted?
The USFL or the UFL, XFL?
2001 XFL.
2001.
And it was universally panned. The next year it was a Monday Night Football.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing about something like this. You can try almost anything.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing games for Fox, when we did Big 12 and Pac-12, like we all were buttoned up and on our best. When we did a Conference USA game, we'd be on like those conference calls you and I both know very well and be like, yeah, can we try whatever? It's Conference USA. Well, you can call the game at the 10-yard line, and that nobody cares. It's like we can do whatever we want. It's a Conference USA game. So that's kind of like how I look at the UFL. Like, it's not about who wins. It's not like you have this huge people tuning in, like with wearing their garb, their swag for the Birmingham Stallions. It's an excuse for us to watch more football.
Yeah,
you can try things out. You can have some fun with it. And again, Chief, for all those ones you missed on, all those 5 stars you thought were going to be in Canton, well, now they're in Michigan playing for the Panthers. Kind of proves that you college boys aren't so smart. It's my vessel. It's my star system now, Chief. I can't think of a better.
I want the
Go
He
ahead.
Hate Me jersey back. Somebody just mentioned He Hate Me in the chat
He Hate
box.
Me, yeah.
I need that in my
He
life.
played for the Panthers too.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's great. Lugs, always love having you on, man. We could do this for hours, just three guys talking ball. It just kind of flows. We love your work. You know that. We will not wait very long before having you back on. Have a safe trip to Michigan. Keep on doing the great work on the shorts, and we shall talk to you soon.
Will do, guys. Thanks for having me as always.
You got
Thanks,
it.
Tom.
He's Tom Luginbill,
See
the
ya.
man, the myth, the legend, ESPN, college football, now the UFL, player evaluator, and pillar of the community. That
Great
is going to
guy.
do it. Yeah. Oh, super.
Yeah,
I mean,
super
Luke's and I
guy.
go way back to calling a MAC game in 2011 on ESPN.
I got to know him in 08, 07, 08, when I went with ESPN from Rivals, and a lot different than he is on TV. I didn't know if I would get along with him or not. Because TV guys are like, they're opinionated and they're this, that, and the other.
Right.
He seemed like super serious. And then
Yeah.
I got to know the guy 5 minutes into our first conversation. I'm like, this dude's awesome.
It's funny as hell. Yeah.
A great guy. Great
He's
guy.
funny, which you and I both know. There are a lot of people in this business that when they're on screen or there's a microphone or a camera in front of them, they know how to turn on the folksiness. Hey, he's a really good guy. Behind the scenes, they're complete and utter jackasses. No names necessary. One day it'll be in the book. Lugs is the opposite. He's even a better guy, nicer guy, more fun guy in person, hanging out with him, working with him. So always love having him on. This guest parade that we've had, and to use JC's term, they're all evergreen. So these are not like time. We're not breaking down what happened in week 3. If you want to go back, you want to listen to an Andy Staples, a Tim Brando, a Ross Dellinger, a Dan Wetzel. So it's all there. jcandmorgan.com or wherever you cover. Follow us on YouTube or Spotify, whatever the case may be. And JC and Morgan, presented in part by Site Pro Rentals. When renting equipment, important to have a local, easy-to-do business friend in the industry that has all the new equipment, create efficiency for you and your project job site. So when that is the case, when you've got work to do, you want to work with local, easy-to-work-with business professionals that are ready for better equipment rental. Call my friends at Site Pro. That's 972-RENT-NOW, 972-RENT-NOW, 736-8669 for better equipment rental. This has been a better episode than, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe. We're up to 230 something. I can't remember. We went a little long today. Appreciate you tuning in all week long. We'll be back with you next week. JC, any parting thoughts or messages, haiku poems, or anything else?
Just kind of looked at our numbers on Twitter/X, and several thousand viewed us today on that platform. So certainly appreciate our audience there, and active chat box today that stayed on topic for the most part. I like that.
Yes. Good job.
Couple guys asked about the Gamecock scrimmage, but most people were kind of right there. So we appreciate all of our fans out there. Don't forget the Chief Sports app is also a place you can find us. And it's really good for things like listening to us in the car, because YouTube, if you don't want to be a YouTube premium subscriber and pay that extra whatever, which I don't, it's hard to keep YouTube up on your phone sometimes. Chief Sports app will take care of that for you. So be sure to download that. Rate it 5 stars. Tell us how awesome it is and all that good stuff.
The brilliant work of the savant himself, Jamie Bradford. Our thanks to the brilliant work of Phil Molinax behind the scenes, our fearless producer. For JC, it's Mike. We'll see you next week. So long, everybody.